Good morning. Welcome to CareerPoint North Bay, and our presentation about planning for variable income. This is a cooperative presentation between CareerPoint North Bay and Community Action Marin, of which SparkPoint is a member. My name is Marvin Brook, and I'm here to make this presentation to you about issues related to financial literacy. First thing I want you to think about, we call this the future gratitude activity. And it's just a little something to think about, but think about it in terms of financial literacy and financial planning. So think of three things you want to have, do or be, and what is your level of happiness. The job could be example where you're living, but think of it in terms of financial things. Where do you want to be? Where are you now currently? And what do you hope to achieve? Now, in this presentation today, we're going to be talking about three major things. The first thing we're going to talk about is how a budget can set you free. First of all, we will ask the question, what is a budget or a spending plan? And what happens when we don't have one? Now, I have a saying that I love and I always follow. No one plans to fail, they just fail to plan. The other thing, next step in this process in the agenda will be how to plan spending when income varies. Not everyone gets the same amount of money every week in their jobs. Some people have seasonal work. Some of you might be in the tourism industry, which we know has been really affected by the recent pandemic. And we're going to talk about the techniques that can help you save. Put away money for the times when your income is not necessarily going to be there, and be able to plan for different expenses that occur during different times of the year, such as, say, your car insurance bills or life insurance bills or any particular thing. If you're a homeowner, for example, let's say you have to pay your property taxes. You need to prepare for those events because not only does your income vary, but your expenses vary. And the key thing in this is you start now before the money arrives. How do you get started and how do you maintain it over time? Because that's the key thing here. We're trying to give you skills that allow you to be in a good financial place, not just today, but forever. In other words, you can give a person a fish or you could teach them to fish. We're here to teach you how to fish. A few notes. Pathways to work, what works for you. Only use what works for you. Sometimes you will try things and they won't work for you. Sometimes you're more comfortable using your phone or using spreadsheets to do things. Sometimes you're better able to do things if you write them down. Sometimes you do things daily. You have to figure out what works best for you, remembering what's the objective. The objective is to put yourself in a real positive financial place. And then you have to look at the best practices that are out there, but you have to compare them to your reality. What is your reality? And again, commit to yourself. Commit to your ability to perform these things. A budget can set you free. And what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is it gives you a tool that allows you to manage your finances. It gives you a process that you can go to on a day-to-day basis to tell you how to achieve the goals that you set out for yourself. So let's ask this question. What is a budget? Okay? A budget is a plan for how you will match your expenses with income. In another term that we like to use, and it might be a more positive way of saying things, is a spending plan. So it takes into account your past spending and income history. So that's why it's very, very important that you have ways of going back in time and understand what you've been spending money on. So that allows you to look at your checking account, look at your debit cards, look at your credit cards. What do you spend money on? Are you spending too much money with cash and not really identifying what you're spending the cash on? Are you using your credit cards but never really looking at anything other than the bill and making your maybe just minimum payment? It also, a budget plan allows you to look ahead and predict future income and spending needs. We should know what's coming up. I have a vacation plan. I have a bill that needs to be paid. I am working on a project for my employer that will be giving me a certain amount of income, but it won't be for 2 months. The budget also helps you to make spending decisions today to reach your financial goals. Say you want to buy a car in 2, 3 years. Maybe take a big vacation. Maybe go to school. Maybe you're planning for retirement. You have to ask yourself, what decisions can I make today that'll help me achieve my goals in the future? Now, how do you view budgeting? Okay, this is sort of something we throw out to people. We ask them to make some responses. And this is usually what we do in a live presentation. We're not in that situation today, so you have to sort of ask yourself these questions. So some people have a negative feeling about the word budget. They find it as a restrictive thing. It might flow. It might not be in the same vein as how they live their lives. It's like being on a diet and you have to sacrifice. We like to look at it more as it's a tool to allow you to not have to sacrifice, to not be on a diet. A budget can be viewed negatively, and it says, well, if I'm on a budget, I can't be spontaneous. I love being spontaneous. Well, we believe that if you're on a budget and you know what areas you have to meet, you have a certain level of spontaneity within the parameters that your budget has established. The other negative thing you might feel is you have to say no to things you want. That's always going to be an issue when you have limited financial resources. Unless you're incredibly wealthy, you're always going to have to make decisions about how you spend your limited resources. Also, budgets sometimes are constant reminders of how bad your situation is. But part of getting ahead in the financial area is knowing where you are now. I mean, we all have to face reality. If we're not doing well, we owe money, we haven't been getting good jobs, we have to take the position that this is the first day of the rest of our lives and use the tools available to us to move forward. Now, what's good about having no spending plan? Okay, and it's effortless, right? If you don't have a spending plan, you don't have to follow the spending plan. Now, hopefully, this particular solution to your problems is not one you want to do. Again, you can be in that situation where you could do whatever you want, but you have to have unlimited resources to do it. So, again, you say, okay, well, how much money do I have in my pocket now? Do I have a credit card with me? There's something I want. I will buy it. And that's fun, as long as there's money in the bank. But we all know that that sort of action could lead to problems, okay? So don't spend any time tracking expenses or planning for the future. No one really wants to spend time, in many cases, seeing what they're spending money on. They might be given information that tells them that they're not doing as well as they thought they were. So again, no spending plan, then you don't have to look at your expenses. And again, think back to your own personal experiences. If you're not in the position you want to be in financially, why is that? Was it because you didn't necessarily have a process on how to assess how you spend? This is where the spending plan comes in. So again, if you're not spending any time tracking expenses or planning for the future, it could lead to a situation where the future will be problematic. Again, not having a spending plan gives you the feeling of spontaneity and freedom. And a lot of us like that feeling. Some of us don't necessarily like the feeling and like having some organization and some spending plan. So without a spending plan, so what's not good about having no spending plan? Okay? Well, you spend money that should go to bills and end up paying late fees and overdraft fees. Good example is you get your paycheck and maybe you worked a little overtime, you have a little more extra money, you feel you've been trying to really stay on top of things, and without even thinking about it, you see something you want and you buy it. And here's the issue. If you had a spending plan, it would establish how much of your paycheck or your windfall that you got from having some extra money can be spent on anything, okay? So what's not good about having no spending plan is you wait for the next check to cover past bills. So you're already in the hole. You are in a situation where you owe money and you can only address that debt through your future paycheck, okay? And if you're living that way, paycheck to paycheck, you basically have nothing left for your financial goals. It also creates stress, and that's a very, very important thing for you to think about. How much stress do you create because of financial issues? And what happens, you go into debt to cover your basic needs without a spending plan. Now, debt would be credit cards, borrowing money from people you know, borrowing money from the bank if you have the resources to do it. And if you go into debt, that could be expensive. We all know how expensive credit cards are and how much interest you have to pay to do it. And of course, if you have no spending plan, you might be in a situation where you have to make choices. Do I have to give up my car because I can't afford the car payments? Do I have to forego medication because I can't pay for my medication? Or I'm taking half of my medication. And the issue of food, etc. There are so many issues you have to deal with because you not plan. So that's the negative downside to not having a spending plan. So one of the examples we like to talk about are the grasshopper and the ant, to put it in these allegorical terms. So what are grasshoppers? They spend whenever they want. A nice thing to do. I want something, I get it. Instantaneous gratification. They think that particular situation will last forever. Again, you happen to get a windfall amount of money. Somebody gave you a big gift. Someone in your family passed away and left you some money. So you see yourself in this real positive situation, but you're not addressing your future needs. So grasshoppers, they live for today. What am I going to do today? And they love material possessions. And material possessions reflect sort of your values and sort of the issue of the society that we operate in that really puts a real onus and a benefit to having material possessions. But that becomes a personal choice as to what makes you, you. Now, what are ants? Well, ants are savers for future needs. They know what they need in the future, and they've identified how much that need is going to cost them. They know there's moments where winter's going to come. The pandemic's a prime example. You would have had a really good job in early January working as the manager of a restaurant. 2 months later, that restaurant's closed and you're out of a job. Never thinking that, oh my God, there are no restaurants for me to go work at. So you should always be prepared for the winter. And you plan for what's ahead. And that's where the whole issue of a rainy day fund. Always planning for the situation where you might lose a job, where you might see a downturn in your finances. These are issues that you have to deal with, and that's what ants do. And ants love their freedom of choice, which is they've prepared themselves financially to be able to make that decision to do A or to do B. Now, income and expenses. This is basically what we all deal with on a day-to-day basis. And the question is, how much time do you spend timing your bills? Or do you just manage by account balance? Now, one of the things that we're able to do these days is take advantage of the technology that's out there. We could set up automatic payments. We could use online banking. We could look at what happens, when do the bills come in. We could use our credit cards to pay a lot of bills and have those bills come to the credit card, and you end up just paying for the credit card. So the question you have to think about on income and expenses, have you gotten to the point where you have to say, can I buy lunch? And then you do something, I wish I hadn't. And that's what happens a lot of times when you're trying to balance your income and your expenses. Now think of a specific time in the last year when you did not have enough money to pay your bills. Now, you don't want to put yourself in that situation, but things happen. Many times people are dealt with a lot of issues like health issues, losing their jobs, a need to support somebody in their family. The list is on and on and on about those things that are unexpected expenses. So, but how did you feel when you were in that situation? Because it's very important to deal with how you feel about not having money and not being in a situation in the future where that happens again. So what sacrifices did you make? Did you have to borrow money? Who did you get it from? And how did you feel? And how does this compare to any negative feelings you've had around using a budget? So even though you might not be happy about having to do a budget, is that unhappiness worse than your feelings of not having enough money to be able to pay for something and having to go hat in hand to, say, a family member, a parent, a cousin, a brother, a sister, who also have their own spending issues? So how do you plan spending when your income varies? Okay, that's a very, very important thing to think about. How do you plan for that? Okay? And planning for seasonal income. First thing you have to do is figure out what your monthly baseline expenses are. What are you paying for rent? What are you paying for a mortgage? What are you paying for utilities? What are you paying for a car? What are you paying for health care? The list goes on and on. Food, clothes, entertainment, okay? So that's the important thing. The other thing you need to figure out is what are the timing of these expenses? Certain expenses, if you're a homeowner, let's say you have property taxes twice a year, big expense. How do you plan for that? Some people pay their car insurance twice a year, big expense. Healthcare, a lot of expenses don't happen every year. But at the end of the day, whatever those expenses are, if you divide them by 12, it basically says, this is my monthly baseline expenses. Okay, the other thing you have to think about is what is my future income? And again, we're talking about situations that people are not working in a job that basically pays them a steady income. Let's say you're an Uber driver and your income varies. You know, you do a lot better during tourist season than you do in other seasons. So your history tells you. You begin to look back and say, you know, I did much better in the summer than I did in the winter. So, and the money I was making in the summer was more than my expenses were. So that's the time when you have to look to save money. Unfortunately, sometimes we might look at our checking accounts and see that we're doing very, very well, but part of that is our seasonal expenses are much lower than our seasonal income, which is why we have to set aside income for rainy days. In the case of seasonal income, you have to set aside money for the time when your income for a particular month or 2 months is lower than your expenses. Here's an example, and it's again saving for the rainy season. That's the season when your expenses exceed your income. So let's say your basic expenses are $3,000 a month. You earn $4,000 a month for 9 months a year. And then you earn nothing for 3 months each year. And this could be a seasonal job where you're working, let's say, again, I like the idea of a tourism. You're working in a vacation area where there's a lot of business for 9 months. Let's say Florida, for example. Things go pretty well, let's say, from September through May. But June, July, and August, very, very hot, and suddenly you don't have as much money. Okay, so you earn nothing during those 3 months. If you don't work 25% of the year, save 25% of each paycheck to maintain your lifestyle. Now, if we look at the chart that's up there, you'll notice that we're showing income for 9 months, nothing for 3 months. But if you'll notice, when we look at the spending, we're spending $3,000 a year for those last 3 months against no income. Now, the spending might not be realistic because it could be that you spend more in month 4 than you do in month 8. Let's say you have a big insurance bill or property taxes or some expense. You have to allow for that. You have to see what's coming down the pike. That's why I'm a big believer in using credit cards to pay your bills, funnel them into your credit card, but make sure you pay your credit card bill off in total so you don't have big interest expenses. So you'll see in this example here that the balance that you have each month based on your income versus your expenses allows you to see that when you get to the end of month 9, you have $9,000 in balance and you're able to cover your $9,000 of expenses for the last 3 months because you realized the situation that you will not have any income. Okay, very important point. So spending plans. Saving strategies. A saving strategy derives directly from your spending plan. And this is where a budget helps you estimate spending needs. You track spending and find the leaks. You know, are you spending too much money, let's say, on getting a morning latte and a bagel instead of making your lunch at home, or your breakfast at home, and having coffee at home, okay? Because the goal is to try to find ways to look at your spending and say, how do I save money out of the spending? And once you've established you can save, then a lot of times you have to think in terms of how do I set up a process to allow that to happen, okay? So a spending plan, it's key that we understand what we're spending on, track the spending, and find out areas where you can save some money. Now the next thing is, once you've done it, now you want to set up some place to put the money. So you want to set aside money aside so you don't think of spending it. Make it difficult to make withdrawals. Think of savings as deferred spending. You're saving money now so you could spend it in the future, okay? And the easiest way to do this is to try to automate this. Pay yourself first. After you've done the work of creating a spending plan, a good solid spending plan that really allows you to identify how much you can actually save, and also allows you to identify, are you spending money on the right things? Okay, once you've done that, you need to set up a process that allows you to pay yourself first. Direct deposit. So set up automatic deposits right after payday. It's either through your employer or you can do it through your bank. If you're self-employed, you can do it. So payroll deductions protect your savings deposit because the money's not in your hands on the day you get paid. It goes into the bank account. And again, ultimately, everything we talk about still comes down to your discipline, your ability to decide, this is not what I want to spend money on. If I want to achieve my long-term goals, I have to start working on that right now. So again, get started now. I have an expression I believe in. This is the first day of the rest of your life. The goal of looking at this presentation is to get the tools that you need to move forward to have control over your financial spending and increase your financial literacy. So why start now? Well, first day of the rest of your life. You either have money or time. That's what I always tell people. If you have the time and you have the skills, that allows you to do things that might cost you money. So you start looking at those situations, start new habits and set up new systems while you have time. Okay? Try to figure out a way to manage your life. Okay? And the way to do it is when you have the time to do it. So for instance, if you're starting a new job, it could be very hectic. You'll get distracted later, so set it up and forget it. In other words, procrastination, no choice, is a choice. So again, you have to do something. You have to set up a process to allow you to manage your finances. Okay, very, very important. Prevent loss aversion bias. Now, what does that mean? It's carve out savings amount before you get used to your take-home pay. Okay, because sometimes if you go ahead and you get used to your take-home pay and you've taken nothing for savings, when you decide that you're going to save, you feel this loss. Because what you've done is you've billed your spending around your total take-home pay and you've not allowed it anything for savings. It's also probably made you somewhat sloppy in your spending because you really are taking money you should be saving for future goals and you're spending it not necessarily in the right way. That's why the bottom line on all of this is be very clear that you're spending money in the right ways. Now, if you're dealing with employers and they have plans such as 401ks or 403bs, that's a 401k for a nonprofit, utilize that, and flexible spending accounts for dependent care and healthcare. All these things are out there that are available to you for the money to go directly into them. So you can not see it, but they're there for your future expenses, such as childcare and healthcare. So commit to yourself, okay? So what commitments do you want to make to yourself? What are your financial goals? What are your saving goals? How will you get support? These are important questions. We're here to support you. We're here to help you. We're here to provide you with the tools that you need to be able to achieve financial freedom. In conclusion, a budget or a spending plan will set you free. How to plan spending when income varies. We hope we've shown you some tools that you can use to be able to deal with the ups and downs that we all deal with in terms of cash flow. And again, start now, have your process in place before the money arrives. Again, we want to thank you. We want to thank Community Action Marin, which is a partner agency of CareerPoint Marin, for developing this workshop. This is SparkPoint. Community Action Marin provides free financial and career coaching and education to help community members achieve self-sufficiency. And to learn more about financial coaching services, please contact us at the below addresses and phone numbers. Okay? Thank you very much for your help on this. It's my pleasure to make this presentation to you today. Have a nice day and a good future.